We researched some stories from the people who had a contact. Some of it with his like real story, like you said, some of it in his mind. Can you say the difference? Is it really or just imagined?
Well, for some people it is. I've met people where it's all just imagined. Whether it's contact or channeling or healing or, you name it. There are many different forms this takes where a person, they fool themselves. But when you have an actual experience, there's no denying it. When I talk to people about having an actual experience, I used to teach classes, and in these classes, the people would have an actual experience, nothing imagined. Because in my view, if you have an actual experience, you've learned something. You've had the experience. Now you have knowledge, and you can keep building on that. So I have these 3 classes that I recorded. I put them up online on my website. So when you have contact, if you're just hearing a voice in your head, tell them that's not good enough. If you want to talk to me, come here. Talk to me to my face. If you're afraid to do that, then you're not real. Challenge them.
That's my next question. How to check and verify it? So some people has like a mind imagined contact, I don't know, in dreams, in a kind of stage of dream, yeah, and they would like to verify it with a kind of information or physical things. Any ideas how to verify?
Well, when you have this kind of experience, it could be that they are contacting you to get you ready for the real experience, to see how you handle the experience where it is not so tangible. So when you have this, maybe it's getting you ready for something greater. And that then when you have the actual experience, then you're not going to be so afraid or worried. You'll feel the connection that much better. It didn't work like that for me, because for me, the man walked up. But maybe it did happen like that for me in a sense, because I saw this very large UFO just hanging above the trees, and they talked to me in my head first. Interestingly, when I was 18, they stopped. The contact stopped, but they would check on me every 10 years. 10 years later, I had a dream that I was told to go out into the desert to a place, and that they would meet me there. They had something to give me, and they would give it to me, and they would meet me there. Well, I had no idea how I was going to get there. It was hundreds of miles away from where I was. I didn't have any money. I didn't have any way of doing this, but I had this dream. Well, things happened, and sure enough, at the appropriate time, I showed up in this place. And while I was there, I had that meeting, and they gave me what they said they were going to give me. And, the dream was 30 days before the event. I had no idea it was going to happen. Another time, there was a dream, and then there was the actual visitation. So I think they use this as a way of preparing you, is what I'm trying to get at. And if people are having these dreams, try to take control of your dreams. try to communicate and tell them, I'm ready. I want to do this face to face. Where do I need to go to do this? And then follow the instructions.
So your opinion, it's start from the good question, yeah, and it's like a direction to moving forward. But I know there are some stories of the people who was fooled by a kind of aliens, I mean in coma, yeah, and they just pushing that you are the one, you're unique and no one else except you, and pushing a kind of this information and etc. So my question is how to verify with whom are you contact, with a good one, aliens, as you told, with a kind of this kind of declaration to help, to make a kind of ideas or other things, or with kind of foolish things which does not have any things like good for exactly this human.
I understand. And you're right. I think, first of all, if the person you're in contact with is telling you that you are so unique and you're not like anybody else on earth, and they're just really building up your ego, that should be a red flag. It should be an indication that something's not right. Because the people that you would want to talk to, these people believe that everyone is important, that everyone has potential. And if they're choosing to talk to you, it's because there's a specific reason to do this. But it's not because you are so amazing in the world that you're the only one they want to talk to. It doesn't work like that.
You told that it was a kind of experiment, and people like you, there are several through the globe. Did you find anyone else from your family?
The people came from very numerous worlds. There wasn't just one. And I have seen a few people that are not from here, that they have a very similar agenda that I do, but they're doing their own thing. And some of these people are famous people, and some of them are not. They're just mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers. They're not seemingly very important at all, but yet they are important because the influence that they have to help others to grow in some capacity.
I thought that globally you have a kind of the same idea, and possibly together you will get much better potential to realize it than separately.
Well, yeah, I understand that. And I've thought the same thing. But, I don't understand, what the ultimate plan is. I just know that there are a lot of people here that are pushing in the same direction. And sure, I mean, if everybody got together, and I've taught people how to do this. This is how I found some of these other people that I'm familiar with. Because there are things that are lost to this world, different practices and different pieces of knowledge that are lost. But I've taught people how to do these things, to bring people together and to empower them. And it's worked quite well. So you're right. I mean, if a bunch of people got together that were same as myself, for example, then yeah, I think there'd be a lot of things that would change. But I don't think that it's necessarily that a lot of people like myself need to do this, because everyone has their own unique ability, their ability to make a change in the world in some capacity. And I think that because of that, teaching other people how to do this is really the important thing.
Don't you have by yourself or your friends an idea to film like your meeting with UFO or aliens and etc. And what's happened with this idea if you had it?
Well, that's a good question, and it is a really good idea. When I've had these experiences, I mean, early on, there wasn't any filming. You were lucky if you had a camera. But now, with the way technology is, a lot of people are making videos about things they see and the experiences they have. But one of the things that's going on is that they don't want to be overtly, in other words, out there prominently. They don't want their faces out there in the world. They don't want to be known because some of them live here as well. And they're walking on the streets. There might be, I'm sure there are people in Moscow who are not from this world who are walking the streets of Moscow. You wouldn't know them, but they look just like you and me. And I think part of it has to do with the idea that they don't want to become that important. Because if they become that important, at that point, you polarize people very severely. There will be followers and there will be disbelievers. There will be people who want peace and others who will be afraid and want war. And it doesn't serve the greater good of what the project is. It's better to remain invisible in some capacity, I think, because of the circumstances that would come to pass if they were to become so out in the open and well known. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen. Maybe it will happen. I hope it does. But the way the people of this world are, there's too much suspicion. There's too much anger. And there's a suspension of belief. And it is the reason why the world is not a very good place as it is. Adding this element to it would challenge religion, and it would challenge doctrines and policies and politics. It would cause a great deal of chaos. If things perhaps could change, then that might be a totally different situation.
Okay, I understand your point of view. We need to think it over about your idea. So the next question is, do you remember your past lives or reincarnation?
Yeah, actually, I do. Quite a ways back. I've been here many times, and usually the times that I show up are right about the same time as we are now in the world where things are about to happen.
Does these abilities appears because of your contact, or you do remember it from the earlier ages?
Well, the abilities I have, they might seem unique on this world, but other places it's very, very usual. It's just no different than being able to smell a flower or feel the wind in your hair. It's unusual here because not everyone can do it, but other places it's very easily done.
Several years ago, I was in Machu Picchu, personally. My friend told me that feeling a kind of alien base inside of the mountain. Your visit in Machu Picchu had a result of meeting aliens. How it was? Does they live in mountains, or does it has any connections? Please tell us.
Well, I've been to Machu Picchu so many times I can't count them now. And I have met extraterrestrials at Machu Picchu. His name was Rich. And then I met the others who were with him. They live in a they live in a village that is a little distance from Machu Picchu, but it's deep in the Andes. Do they have an alien base inside the mountain? There's something in there. I don't know what it is. But I don't think they have a base, particularly there at Machu Picchu. But I do know there are a couple places, a few mountains, where they look like mountains, but doors open and UFOs fly in and out of them. You try to climb the mountain, it'll shake you off.
Could you tell us about your contact with Rich? What's happening, why it's happened, and what's the information or result of this meeting?
Well, it's a bit of a complicated story. While I was at Machu Picchu one summer, I just tried to contact Zoe mentally. So I sat at the Intihuatana and did a meditation, and it was a beautiful day. So I just called out, Zoe, where are you? I'm in Machu Picchu. Why don't you come on by? Well, there was a voice that came back in my head. It was different, and it said, who are you? And so I told him who I was and told him about the contacts. It was the same clarity of voice as I would have with Zoe. They said, all right, we'll look into this and we'll get back to you, basically. It wasn't unfriendly and it wasn't friendly. It just was. So I left. A few months later, I'm back. And I'd forgotten all about this. As I'm going back up to Machu Picchu, you know that bus that you rode going up to Machu Picchu? Well, I was on top of the bus. I much more enjoyed riding on top of the bus. On the way up, there was this man who walked out of the jungle, and he stopped the bus and he climbed up and joined me. After being up there, we talked very little. I introduced myself, he introduced himself. A little while later, I said, so where are you from? And he said, I'm from the Pleiades. I'm thinking, oh, brother, sure you are. And I kind of laughed. He says, no, really, I am. And so we talked a little bit more about this. Next thing you know, we get to Machu Picchu, and I'm there with my group of people. I'm taking them into Machu Picchu. Rich is already inside somehow. And I meet up with him again and walk with him. He's going to climb up Huayna Picchu, and I'm going to go with the rest of the group and go around. Well, to climb up to Huayna Picchu, if you're really, really skilled, you can do it in about 45 minutes. If you're not in very good shape, it'll take you at least an hour, maybe longer. It's a very steep climb. This fellow that was with me had these giant binoculars, looked like something from a cartoon. And he's looking around. Rich had just left, just a few minutes before. This fellow I'm with, he's looking around, looks up to the top at Huayna Picchu, and he says, your friend's already at the top. I said, that's impossible. It's got to be somebody else. So I borrowed the binoculars from him. They were giant, just giant binoculars. It was so funny. Power lifted them up to my eyes, and I'm looking, and it was very clear. Yes, that was Rich. He was looking right at me, and he smiled and he waved. And I pulled the binoculars down. How the hell is that possible? I didn't know what to think of it. So I told him that night we were going to be back at Machu Picchu, because we used to go to Machu Picchu after dark. So I'm wondering if he's going to show up. Within a few minutes of getting to the Intihuatana again, everybody would sit on the Intihuatana and they would do a meditation for about 5 minutes. Then the next person, there's about 20, 25 people. I've done this so many times, I didn't need to stand there. So I walked away from the Intihuatana, and I'm standing on this precipice. This big stone thing that sits up on top of a hill. I walked away, walked down on a precipice, and it's just a drop off on all sides except where I just came from. It's like a peninsula of land that just sticks out. And I'm standing there having a cigarette, looking around, finish my cigarette, I turn around, walk a few steps, and I hear this sound like the sound of plastic being crunched. Like the wrapper on a cigarette pack. So I turn around and there's Rich. He's standing there. Well, I was surprised. So we talked. And in the course of the conversation, I asked him, how did you do that? Well, he showed me this little thing on his belt. He was dressed like a hiker. Jeans, t-shirt, jacket. He showed me this little box on his belt that had a little very, very dim blue light, like a blue LED. It was very, very soft. And he says, well, I just touched this, and then it's how I travel. So I asked him if I could borrow it. He said no. And then he said, well, it's time for him to go anyway. He'll show me how it works. So he said goodbye. He touched it. There was the same sound of the crackling. And then there was this very light blue marble shaped small bead of light where he was standing, just floating in the air, just very still. And then it took off and it floated away. I saw Rich for many years after that, and I met the other people that he traveled with. I saw their UFOs. I saw them land. He was a good friend for a while. And the reason why we had this encounter initially is because I'd called out to Zoe. But the reason it continued is because Rich and his others were scientists from the Pleiades, he said. And I guess I believe him, because if someone lands a flying saucer and comes out and tells you they're from the Pleiades, how can you argue with that? Rich was an anthropologist, sociologist, as were some of the others. Some of them were biologists. They wanted to be able to talk to the people that I would bring to Peru and just talk to them, spend time with them, and discuss different things just so they could understand, I guess, more than they already understood.
I know some interesting stories of your Peru visiting in Peru, like you meeting a big one, 5 or 6 meters high giant creatures in a hotel. Actually, it's interesting why they started to meet with you in a hotel.
Yeah, that was Posada del Inca. It's actually a resort with individual bungalows that sit in a garden-like setting on the side of a hill on the mountain right across. Up to this time, I'd seen ghosts and had all kinds of strange experiences. But what happened is that they showed up to tell me it was time for me to do what I came here to do, to this world to do. And if I wanted to, I could do that. And if I chose not to, well, that was fine too. It was up to me. Well, I chose to do it. They showed up in the room to deliver that message, but they weren't extraterrestrials. They were angels. I saw them on another occasion, and that really clarified what they were. I never believed in angels before at all. I thought it was just made up stories. But when I saw these people and then saw them again, there was no doubt what they are. They weren't extraterrestrials. They were from the spiritual realm. They were angels.